Okay, today is going to be a continuation from last week. Today we're going to start by creating a new image, and we're going to format it to a 8.5 by 10. So we're going to go to File, New, and remember we don't use inches, we always use pixels. So you might need to set this to pixels. And our image size, we're going to put, for the width, we want 3600. And our height, we're going to make 2880. We want 300 for our resolution. Our color mode is RGB color, 8-bit. And the background content is set to white, so that's absolutely fine. And we click OK. So the first thing that I like to do is not to work against a white background. I prefer working against a neutral gray background. So what I'm going to do is go to Edit, Fill, and in the Use, I'm going to select 50% gray and click OK. And you'll see why a bit later why I prefer working against a gray background. So next, I'm going to get my marquee. I have the rectangle marquee, and I know that by looking at the marquee, and I see that I have the dotted square. Here, there's nothing precise about doing this. I'm just going to create a rectangle, something like that. You can experiment with the size, but basically, we're just creating a rectangle, so you can try to duplicate something along those lines. I'm not worried about being precise here. So next, I want to create a new layer for my container there, and I do want us to name these layers. So there's a couple of ways that we can do that, but the way that we're going to do it, we're going to go to the menu bar to Layers. We're going to click New, and we're going to click Layer. And the neat thing about doing it this way, it gives you the opportunity to give it a name. So I'm simply going to call it Image. Here we can also select a color for that layer. So I'm simply going to select the color of red for that layer, and I'm going to click OK. And there we see our image layer. And we see the color given there is red. So here I'm going to go over to my swatches. And if your swatches isn't available, on the menu bar, go to Window. And then you're going to look for swatches in that drop down. Here I know my swatches is already available because I see that there's a check mark there. If there's no check mark there, click the check mark, click the swatches, it'll place a check mark. So for over here, here are my swatches, and I'm simply going to choose a color, and there I chose kind of a dark blue, and it's in my foreground. Now I want to fill this layer called Image, and this is my marquee with my foreground color. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and tap the Delete key, and there I have filled my selection, my rectangle marquee, with my foreground color. So to get rid of the dotted lines, I'm going to do a Control D. Now always remember, in this particular class, for these particular sessions, we're creating and we're working with smart objects. So to create a smart object out of our image layer here, simply go over to that blue section in the image layer, right click and select Convert to Smart Object. That's all we need to do. Now when we look in that layer, we see that we have a smart object thumbnail. Next, we're going to double click in that blue area to bring up our layer style menu. And we're going to select stroke. Now you must click where it says stroke and not just check the box. So here my stroke color is black. Here you can kind of see a little thin outline of black. I want white. So I click where it says color, And in the color picker, I'm going to go in the upper left-hand corner and click where that white area is there. And I'm going to click OK. Now we can see that my stroke is white, but I want it to be a bit bigger. So I'm going to drag it until I say I see something that I like. I'm at 21. 20 would be fine also. But I want sharp corners. Here, with my position being on the outside, I'm not getting an inside sharp corner. I'm getting an outside rounded corner. So I'm going to change my position from outside to inside. And there we see we now have a clean, sharp corner there. Now at this time we're done with setting the stroke. Next we're going to set a drop shadow. So once again I'm going to click the word drop shadow and not just check the box. And in my angle, I'm going to set my angle to 90 degrees because I want my shadow to appear just below my image area. And I'm going to drag my slider the distance just to where I can see a bit of a shadow peeking out there. And I'm going to soften that shadow by dragging my slider. So for here I have my distance of 11 and a size of 24 at the angle of 90 degrees, which is absolutely fine. Works fine for our purpose. I'm going to click OK. So now we see we have our image. We have applied some effects. We applied a stroke and a drop shadow. Next, I want to make a duplicate of this. There's a couple of ways, but the quickest way for me is to do a Control and tap the J key. There we see now we have duplicated our layers. Here we still have our image layer, but this one it says image copy. Let's go to that one that says image copy. And I'm going to change the name by double clicking. And I'm going to simply call it reflection. Reflection. Now I can leave it in its location above the image layer, but what I want to do, I want to swap those two layers because I want my image layer to be at the top and I want my reflection layer to be at the bottom. So next, now we need to flip that reflection. And I know you can't see it. There's two ways we can do this. We can either trust what I'm saying, we can leave it as is, or we can enter in set a picture, whichever is easier. So not to confuse you, what we're going to do here is double click on either one of these to open up that smart object. Now we're inside our smart object. I'm going to go File, Place, and I'm going to select a photo of my granddaughter here. And that's my Nana. And I'm going to place this image. Now, there's two ways that we can constrain our proportions. I always prefer the most easiest way. And here, if we click, locate and click on this little chain link there, and it says maintain the aspect ratio. Once we click there, now we can drag any of the corners. Remember, to maintain the aspect ratio, only drag the corners. So here I can scale this up a little bit bigger to fit more in there to my liking. Okay, I like that. She's giving me a lot of attitude. Now, there's a couple of ways we can commit this. I can either check the box to commit transform, or I can press enter on the keyboard, or I can double click. Here I'm double clicking. Either method works fine. Next, I'm going to locate this tab here that represents our image layer, and I'm going to click the X to close and go yes. Okay, there's our picture of Nana. I'm going to get the move tool, or you can press the V key on the keyboard to get the move tool. I'm on the bottom layer that says reflection. And while holding down the shift key, I'm simply going to drag that reflection layer down. Drag it down. Now I kind of wanted to have a little small gap there in between. So to nudge it down, I'm simply pressing the down arrow on my keyboard. And there I can nudge up or nudge down. So I want to nudge it down just a little bit where there's a gap there. But I may have to end up doing this anyway because now we got to do a vertical flip on this reflection layer. And the way that we're going to do that, we're going to go to the menu bar and go to Edit. We're going to go down to Transform. And from Transform, we're going to click Vertical Flip. There. Now we have our image flipped vertically. And there we see Nana's feet now mirrors the placement of her feet. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to do here. In order for this to be a true reflection, we don't want it to look like we just duplicated and flipped the image. We want to have our image fade from 100% down to 0% to give us a true fade. So there's a couple of ways that we're going to do that. So what we're going to do first, we're on our reflection layer. There's a couple of ways we can do this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to right click this image thumbnail there. Right click, and I'm going to click Select Pixels. There we see now that bottom layer, that's reflection, those pixels has been selected. Next, I'm going to click my background layer. I'm going to click that layer to highlight it. Then I'm going to click the icon Create New Layer. And there I get a new layer. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to press the G key to get my gradient tool. Notice the gradient tool there. And if we move up now to our toolbar, we'll see a bar here that says click to edit the gradient. So I click there. And for our use here, we're going to select not the first one, but we want the second one. Foreground to transparent. That's the one that we want to use. And then we're going to click OK. Next, what we're going to do, remember that reflection layer? Let's go back to that reflection layer and right click on it. And from there, we want to set it as a clipping mask. Now, that layer is that image that's on that reflection layer. It's going to disappear. Because remember, we're telling that reflection layer to take on the properties of the layer below it. So let's click back on that layer below it. And there's nothing there. So as we use our gradient tool to fill this empty selection on this layer here called layer 1, our image will be displayed. A portion of our image will be displayed, but it will be displayed in the form of a gradient. It doesn't matter the color, but we are going to make sure that on our toolbar, our opacity is set to 100%, and our layers panel, our opacity and our field is set to 100%. So here where I'm going to start, I'm actually going to start at the bottom of our visible image. Keep in mind, we still have our dotted rectangle marquee tool here, and we're on that bottom layer, layer number 1. So starting here at the bottom of our photograph, I'm going to hold down Shift. Now I'm going to drag down maybe a third of the way and let go. And there we see our reflection magically appears. So if you didn't like it, if it's too much, you don't want to go quite as far, you want to undo it, just hold down the Control key and tap the Z key. Here we can do it once again. I'm holding down the Shift. I'm starting at the bottom of my image. This time I'll probably drag just a quarter. Okay, that looks good. Remember, there's nothing, no right or no wrong to this. It's whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you're happy with. I'm happy with that, so I'm fine with that. So to get rid of my dots, I do a Control D to get rid of my selection. There, that looks nice to me. That works for me and for my purpose. Now, let's kind of give our image something to reflect off of. So once again, I'm going down to and select my background layer. And here I'm going to click Add a New Layer. And I'm going to change the name of it to maybe Table. Table. And we're going to create a table for our image to sit on. Next, I get my rectangle marquee by tapping the M key. And I know I have the rectangle marquee because I see the dotted square. Remember, if you don't see the dotted square, but you see the ellipse, hold down the left mouse button. You'll get a flyout and click the rectangle marquee. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go maybe a third of the way here, maybe a third height of the image, and I'm going to drag all the way across and down. And this way I'm highlighting the bottom third of my image there. I'm going to fill it with my foreground color, which is blue. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to do an Alt Delete. There we get blue. And blue is okay, but I prefer black. So let's press the D key. And what the D key does, it resets your foreground background color to the default of black and white. So here now I'm going to do an Alt Delete once again to fill with my foreground color, which is black. That looks much better to me. Okay, to get rid of the selection, we all should know this by now. Control D. That looks good to me. Now, here's another thing that we're going to do here. On my background layer, I'm going to click my background layer. And then I'm going to create a new layer once again. And let's give this the name of color. Color background. I'm just calling it color background, just trying to give our layers some names so we can be able to keep up with the name of our layers. So here, what I'm going to do now, from my swatches, remember how to get your swatches? From here, I'm just going to select a color. It said pure blue. Then I'm going to press my G key again to get my gradient tool. And we still have that gradient where it goes from the gradient to transparent. That's absolutely fine. So once again here, I'm holding down my Shift key. And I'm starting from the top and I'm dragging down. And there we see we get a gradient, which is absolutely fine for our purposes. Next, what we want to do is locate this little half moon here. It's half black, half white. Create a new fill or adjustment layer. Let's click there. And we're going to select hue and saturation. And we get our hue and saturation properties. I'm going to click colorize. And when I click colorize, I want to darken my gradient in the background. So where it said lightness, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to drag it down just to where it appears a little dark at the top and it's a little light at the bottom. Now the neat thing about doing this this way, where you see the hue slider, I can now grab that hue slider and I can change the color of my background to just about any color that I like in the background. So let's see. I always tend to go to blue. I like blue. So if I want to lighten that background up a bit, I simply go to my lightness slider, and I can slide that lightness slider to lighten it up a bit in the background. So now what I'm doing here, I'm simply going to the bottom of my layers panel and I'm stretching it down so I can see all my layers here. So what I would like to do is group those layers together that make up my image and my reflection. So I'm going to click the layer that says image. I'm holding down the shift, or you can hold down control and click each one, the image, the reflection, and this layer number 1. Then to group them together, I'm going to hold down the control and click the G key. And there it gives us a grouping of 1. I'm pressing the V key. Now I can move my entire group around. So from here, I can move my image either further down on my make-believe table area, or I can move it further up in my make-believe table area there. That gives us our reflection. All right, so this concludes our lesson for this particular item.